Hello everyone, Chris Sawyer here, Small H to the Stars, your great friend, and of course, the great varietal show. Today we are at a very special place here in Sonoma Valley. This is called Laconda Estate. I've done a few shows with them in the past. I'm loving their wines, very micro kind of boutique winery. And we are here at an amazing villa, which is on the property. And I brought a special friend of mine to be with us today, and that is the great Dr. Liz Tosh, right there, Master of Wine, my dear darling friend, and of course, Brian Graham, the great winemaker who makes these wines. This is so good to just be here with two people. It is that time of the year in 2002. We are still distance apart, so we are not cuddled up. We are keeping our distance, but we are drinking great wines together. So without further ado, I want to go into the three great red wines from this property, and then also one of them is from the Beckstoffer Ranch. So without further ado, Brian, take over.
Okay. You want to start with the Remus?
Yeah, let's start with the Remus.
Yeah.
So we're talking about, where are we right now? We are in basically Sonoma Valley, but we are about a stone's throw from Chateau Saint Jean. We are hidden in this little area here, which is kind of like a natural amphitheater inside this little baby valley. We are looking down at all of Sonoma Valley right down the hill here. And it's got some unique soils, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this property.
So there's two completely different soils on the property. The Arbuckle soil down below, and then this red clay loam up on top. Really steep vineyard we just planted up on top. Down below here, the lower vineyard, we actually have Primitivo and Durif Clone Petit Syrah. Literally 22 rows total. We call it 10 rows Kenwood and 12 rows Kenwood. And so the Primitivo is called Remus, and the Durif Clone is called Romulus.
Okay.
Play on the founders of Rome. Everything here is an Italian theme. Dr. Joe went to the University of Rome. All of the villas here on the property are all Tuscan influence. So it's a really fun project.
That's great. So, it's really neat to have Dr. Liz Tosh here, Liz, as I call her. We always have a fun time tasting together, and one of the things that got her here was the fact that we were going to be tasting Primitivo, which is a very interesting grape variety, which has been proven to be directly related to Zinfandel. It was our great friend, Dr. Carol Meredith from University of California, Davis. It kind of came as a side note because we were just trying to find out where Zinfandel was from originally, and it was from Croatia, but that same DNA matched up perfectly with this grape as well. The interesting tidbit there is we have so much history of Zinfandel in California going back to the 1840s, 1850s, but we don't have hardly anything on Primitivo. And this is a high-end Primitivo that really has some really interesting, luxurious components to it. So tell us a little bit about what it's like to make Primitivo.
It's more black fruit than red fruit. It's not as tutti frutti. A lot of Zinfandel has that massive strawberry that kicks off in the front. This is a little more, I call it black plum. There's a little bit of a boysenberry note to it. One of the fun things I like about it is the mid palate. It's not your typical Zinfandel style wine. It's got great body and texture, a little bit of earthy character. And when you put Primitivo, the clone Primitivo, next to a clone of Zinfandel, real Primitivo, they taste different.
Yeah.
They DNA-wise, yes, they're a match, but the clonal differences, it's like tomatoes in my mind, right? I mean, just because they're both tomatoes doesn't mean they taste the same. And that is fun for us. 2 years in the barrel, unfined, unfiltered. I really want to pay homage to the style, give back, and it's just I want to bring it back to some old world style winemaking here.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing. You just kind of made a point there too about the Mediterranean. So think about this. This is really in the boot of the Mediterranean, so the boot of Italy. Imagine where Zinfandel was from Croatia. So you're talking about the Adriatic Sea up there. We're talking about Mediterranean down here. It's almost comparable to if you had the same clone of Pinot Noir and you planted it here in Sonoma County and you planted the same one up in Oregon's Willamette Valley. Would it taste different? Yeah, it would actually. And that's what we're talking about here. So this is a really interesting one. I've been fascinated personally with Primitivo. What have you thought about it, Liz?
Oh, I came here today to taste this wine.
Yeah.
Plus the other one. But I just want to say thank you for inviting me to this 6 foot tasting. We measured, we're 6
We're
feet
doing good.
apart. Yeah, and it's funny, a few years ago I went to Puglia and also Croatia to trace the footsteps of Primitivo, and this is taking me right back to Italy.
Cool.
But with the California sunshine in here. I'm really impressed by how dark this is. It's completely opaque,
Yeah.
black looking wine, and on the nose it's exactly as you said, Brian, just a lot of black fruit, and I'm getting like also some chocolate and some black licorice in here too,
Yeah.
as well as that earthy complex note. So it's really unique and different and delicious. I can imagine what this would be like with a big stew or some game. Really good.
Yeah, we do a lot of pasta and bolognese sauces and
Oh
things
yeah,
like
that
that
too.
One of the things I want to do with this wine is I want to balance, the fine line between old world and new world. Really hands-off approach with the wine. I want it to be as native as possible. I really want all of those reminiscent factors you just talked about with Italy coming through. But you have to have fruit.
Right.
So you're getting the fruit from the California ripeness, and then you're getting the hands-off approach in the winery. And I think there's a good balance there.
I do too. And I mean, I think that also the kind of characteristic that I'm getting here on the nose especially is that little bit of blue fruit, and that's more that violets, like crushed violets, and some nice little lavender notes, which you do not usually get in Zinfandel. It's really, Zinfandel can give you so much great stuff, a lot of briary kind of characteristics, some wild kind of herbs, but they're not usually this kind of herbal essence, which is more of a floral kind of essence. If you know cool climate Syrah, this is kind of similar there. This is not that crazy to talk about it, even though it is directly related to Zinfandel.
Right.
Really interesting one.
I get crushed pine needles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not quite clove-esque, but I get a lot of crushed pine needle.
Well, that is terroir too. So where we are sitting right here, we are in a bowl-shaped little area, Chateau Saint Jean, right over the hill here. This vineyard was really planted or replanted because the original property did have an old vineyard that needed to be taken out and put in some new grapes. And actually, Phil Couturier, one of the great vineyard managers and vine growers of the United States, put these vines in. This comes from 10 rows?
Yeah.
Is it 10 rows of grapes right here? But the fact is, it's right down here in this really interesting area. But what is up on these hills? Pines. Little pines, there's oaks down here. So we're talking about terroir based on the trees around us too, because do we go out there with rakes and rake all this stuff up? I don't think so. It kind of becomes part of the natural landscape, and it is kind of part of the ground as well. So I think that's a great observation right there. Absolutely.
And excellent texture too on the palate. I mean, it's got some like chewiness to it.
Yeah.
And some structure and some tension going on. That's neat. I mean, Chris, I can imagine if you took this and you put it next to a glass of, Dry Creek Zinfandel, we're talking like 2 completely different beasts.
Polar opposites.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And really Dry Creek has a lot of dark cherry kind of characteristics, whereas I'm getting more wild kinds of berries. This is really something that's more about this little landscape right here, and it's just, we are really at Kenwood, but we're kind of at the end of Kenwood. If we were to go that way, we would be down at Ledson and St. Francis Winery down there, but
Landmark's done.
yeah, Landmark too, right at the base. So we're really kind of getting into the mountains. This is the Mayacamas right here too. So it's a really interesting thing because right over the hill, we're talking about Oakville, Rutherford, that's right over the hill from us here. So really interesting wine. I love this, and I think that you guys have become the ambassadors of, can this be a high-end wine? And I say yes, it can. This is a really amazing wine that will be shockingly different from anything you guys have ever had before. It's delicious.
And we made a whopping 85 cases.
85 cases. You want to talk about boutique? That is a good definition of boutique. Is 85 cases from 10 rows of vines. So that's the Remus, and named after the two brothers that founded the city of Rome. Remus being one, and the next one being Romulus. So tell us a little bit about this amazing wine.
So this is another one of those debatable clones, right? This is Durif clone Petit Syrah. So yes, it is Petit Syrah, but it's the Durif clone. And so clonally, you're going back to a completely different area of the world. What I get out of this wine is it doesn't have that insane blueberry, jammy notes that Petit Syrah
Almost
gives me.
boysenberry, like kind of bright.
It's black.
Fruits.
I get a lot of black plum. I get a lot of black plum and briary black fruits right off the nose, blackberry. But it's got that really sort of chalky elegance to it. It's just really fun.
Isn't that fun? Chalky tannins on the
And the dark chocolate part of it too. It's almost like a dark chocolate truffle that's happening inside my mouth right now. It's got high acid, and you are kind of an acid nut, aren't you? You like capturing the acid.
I didn't early on in my career. I fell into the trap early on of making the fat, flabby, high pH wines. That was a thing to do.
That's before I met this guy.
If you weren't closing in on 4.0 pH, you were not making wines that Parker would score. And so everyone sort of just, in the late 90s, everyone sort of went that direction, middle of late 90s. I started tasting my wines 4 or 5 years into it and realized they were going flat very fast. And it bothered me. You're making these wines and they go into people's cellars, and all of a sudden you're sort of embarrassed that they're not even remotely close to what they were. So I started realizing that I needed to pick a little differently and start concentrating on fruit and mouthfeel and things of that nature. And so I'm an acid guy. I think that there's a weight you want in the wine, but the shoulders of the wine, the structure of the wine is the acid. And quite frankly, acid is where your fruit comes from.
Yeah.
So if you want that vibrant fruitiness in a wine, you really want that vibrant note, you need to have some acid in the wine.
And you have to have acid to age these wines. I mean, if they just are a bunch of grape juice, they're not going to age. It's a really integral part of age-worthy wines. And if you're going to make a high-end wine, especially something that's so limited release, this is 85 cases.
This is around 96.
96,
So we have a little bit more.
96, okay, closer to 100 cases. Jeez. But the Durif clone is something very interesting, and Liz and I love this clone because it's the original clone that came over here to the United States. A lot of people just call it Petit Syrah. Petit Syrah. There are 3 different clones that were made, or this is plant material that was developed in University of California, Davis, which is my alma mater. Fantastic stuff, but it's going to produce big fruity kinds of wines. Whereas this was the original one that came over here, and it's named after Francois Durif, who was the one that created this grape out of 2 interesting grape varieties, which is one is Syrah, the other one is Pelersan, which you never hear about because it's from the south of France, but has some legs over there, but we have none here really in the United States. So it's really an interesting one, and I would argue, and I think Liz would agree with me, that this was the predecessor to Cabernet Sauvignon, and it is because it is 2 grapes put together, and as we know through science, Cabernet Sauvignon is not an indigenous grape. It was a creation of Sauvignon Blanc and Cabernet Franc being brought together. So this was here, 100 years before, well, not quite 100. I would put it about 70 years before Cabernet Sauvignon caught on. This was already here. Amazing. What do you think, Liz?
I love it. And Chris, you and I, we do judging a lot.
Yeah.
Petit Syrah, and some of the winemakers like to call it PET.
Pet.
P-E-T.
Pet.
PET.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges with this is the tannin management.
Yeah.
But Brian, you've done an incredible job on this. I love the tannins. You managed to just make them chalky and softer, but with that acid, my mouth is watering from the acid.
And it's got a nice richness to it too. It's sexy. It's a sexy wine.
Yeah, and I don't know if you like to use the word minerality, but
Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
definitely getting
Yeah.
some different kind of minerals on here, just a hint of like a maybe even tar or you know, some kind of a wet rock or a wet stone.
Slate. I get a little slate, limestone,
Yeah.
slate wet.
I
Yeah.
think it's a lot of the alluvial kind of part that's kind of the rocks that have gone down right to the base here. And we're only about 100 yards from the vineyard right down here on the other side of the pool. Nice pool, by the way. But you also have some growing up there on the hill, which is a crazy slope. When we showed Liz that, she said, oh, whoa, what is the degree up
Very
there?
steep.
That's a steep slope up there. So you've got a little touch up there too.
Yeah, that's a completely soil. We're really excited to see what happens up there. That's that red clay loam.
Yeah, that's more like the kind of, if we were to take Oakville, Napa Valley, and put it over here, it's on this hill. That's the same.
Well, it's the
soil.
same, yeah, it rolls over the hill.
On the Mayacamas range.
Yeah.
So it really comes right over the hill. It's amazing. But I just like the density of this wine, that as it opens up in the glass, and I will say that we've had this poured for quite a while, and it is amazing right now. So this is one that when you do serve it with dinner, you need to decant this. As a good chef, if you're making the dinner, I would definitely open it and taste some yourself about an hour or so before you decant it. And
I call it actually next day wines.
next day wines.
They actually drink better the next day.
Exactly.
You don't need to gas it. Just put the cork back in it. Keep it on the shelf. I'll keep it on the counter, and it will that oxidation, that micro oxidation, not macro, but the micro oxidation of just letting the natural oxidation what's in the bottle happen. If you decant it, you should drink it.
Yeah.
But if you're just going to pour a couple of glasses out of it, it'll drink a lot better the next day.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's gonna go really well with a charcuterie and
Yes.
those rich cheeses, and
Yeah.
you could just cut through the fat on anything.
Yeah, I think that it's about time to do that. I thank you guys for joining us for this little segment. We're going to come back with a little bit more, some other little secret things that they make here with some vineyards from Beckstoffer. If you guys know Andy Beckstoffer from Napa Valley, they have a few things that they bottle from his special vineyards too. So thank you once again for joining us here at the Bridal Show. Woo!